wherever you're comfortable with starting.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, you can just introduce yourself, just who you are, and I'll jump into.
Sure. My name's Jen Fraser. I am from Maryland. I am a grad student, and I'm a GTI, which is like a TA for your class. Yes. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, and yeah, pronouns she, they.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah. That's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Yeah, so just on the record that this is for the Death Penalty podcast collection. Okay, so my first question is, what's your thoughts on the death penalty, like in general, like a overall sense, I guess?
My thoughts on, can you say it one more time? I think something's up with your volume.
Oops, sorry. What's your thoughts on the death penalty in like an overall sense?
Oh, there we go. Okay, much better. So I feel like it's a really complex and nuanced issue. So my initial instinct and my initial reaction is probably just that, like, I don't think it's right to take another person's life, regardless of the reasoning behind it or the intent or whatever. I understand that there's some pretty messed up people in the world, but there's something that just feels inherently wrong to me about that. And I mean, I always like to look to things that kind of champion basic human decency, and in my opinion, that involves not killing people.
Not killing people indeed.
But I understand that it's a bit more complicated than that, because then you get into the weeds a little bit, right? When you're talking about people who decide that they're above that and want to take the lives of other people. So it's well, how do you effectively mitigate those issues? How do you effectively handle those issues and penalize those issues?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't necessarily say that the answer is to go full on eye for an eye, oh, you killed someone, therefore you have to die. I don't know. I think that we need to be a little bit more creative with how we handle each other.
There needs to be a sense of I guess control and not really thinking about your specific feelings towards a situation, but how you can be forgiving and help in any certain way, instead of always going to the option of killing other people,
Exactly. And I think if you bring up a really good point. Hold on, see if I can turn this. We're good. Okay. Hey. You bring up a really good point about control, because I feel like that's kind of where it all stems from, right? People having a need and a desire for control. I mean, I feel like if you get at the root of most conflicts amongst people, that is somewhere in the mix, if that makes sense. I mean, any of these isms, right? You say, racism, sexism, sorry, all these things, I feel like are kind of they're aspects of our society, but I think they speak to our deeper human nature, which is just that we want to work for self-preservation, and that involves control. And if I'm not in control of a situation, then that is bad, right? Capitalism, if I don't have all the money, then that's bad, because then I'm uncomfortable. If I'm not better than this person, then that means that, I could be subject to, having certain negative and adverse effects happen in my life, and that's not good. I want to be in control of that. So I'm creating all these, this arbitrary hierarchy to kind of give myself this false sense of security. And I think in that involves, taking another person's life. It's like you think, well, they're dangerous, they're radical, they're out in the world doing whatever the fuck they want, and I'm scared of that, and I need control. So, the logical thing would be to make it so that that person ceases to be, because that lack of control scares me.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, like, I also find this interesting that, like, it can be, I don't know, it's like the most simplest thing. Control is such a simple and, like, broad topic, because, like, you could be talking about, like, kids wanting to keep their toy or something like that, all the way up to, like, the fact that you want to end someone's life so that it's easier and more, you feel safe. It's just, like, it's simple in the sense that it can be negative and positive how you define simplicity of that. But yeah, why do you think that the death penalty is still around, like, nowadays, or still a thing?
So I think, 1 second, sorry, I'm moving. I think it's because, as much as we would like to think that we're an advanced society capable of creative solutions to things, I honestly, I don't know how true that is. And what I mean by that is that, like, again, going back to that notion of, like, having a desire for control, right? Like, I think that people will, always find opportunities, whether they are intending to or not, to fall back into those very, like, primal instincts. And if we talk about, like, that desire for control being at the root of things, like, I mean, even you mentioned, like, little kids, it starts when you're young, right? Yeah. Like, you're either taught this or conditioned this, or you're born with this behavior, and it's like, little kids don't even want to, like, share their toys, or, like, be away from their parents, right? Like, it's a survival mechanism. So I think that, like, it kind of speaks to that deeper survival mode primal instinct, like, where if there is a threat to my life, I need to eliminate it. Yeah. Whether it's real or imaginary, real or perceived. Like, if there is a threat, I need to get rid of it. And I think that as much as we try to evolve and think of creative alternatives, like, at the end of the day, like, we're still kind of stuck in that mode. Like, we're just really set in our ways, and I think some folks more than others, especially, like, lawmakers and policymakers, I think, because there's a certain degree of comfort that comes along with being in the position that they're in, because they have power.
Yeah.
And I think that can be, like, a negative influence, in that instead of thinking more empathetically and on a more humane level, their power has become their identity. So they're like, it's inseparable. Like, I'm only thinking of myself as this powerful entity who can, like, give and take life and make decisions, and I'm on some God level shit, right? So, like, yeah. I don't want to relinquish that. And again, if this person is a threat to society, they're a threat to me and my power and my status and my enacting those primal fears and such in people. And it's just that, like, instead of us being, like, angry cave people running outside the cave with spears to go kill the big scary mammoth or whatever the fuck, like, it's that now we're in suits and we're in courtrooms and we're telling people that they need to die, like, and I think there's people who support these efforts, of course, because they either support their favorite politicians or are playing into this illusion of safety, and all sorts of reasons. And then kind of, it's just, once you have, like, that whole groupthink thing going on, it's kind of hard to change people's minds.
Yeah. That's very true. I feel like we do have to, like, highlight that. I agree with I agree with a lot of what you just said, but, like, I agree with the sheer fact that, like, we are still, there are, like, people who are not stuck in their way. Like there are people who are trying to, you know, change this whole idea of how we go about this. But yeah, there are people that are stuck in their ways and that just don't. I guess like yeah, there's this level of like need for power, and there's this level of feeling safe and secure by these upper ups. Like the people feel safe. Like there's some people that feel safe because of their actions and what they're doing, and then there's like this idea of what do I call it, like yeah, like you just, there's nothing else that could be done. Like you don't explore other options. You just feel like this has to be this way.
What has to be.
Yeah, it has to be this way, or else it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, okay. Other question: do you believe it's a difficult topic to discuss?
Sure. I mean, like, I feel like you know, you and I are on the same page about this, but. You know, I even had to, like, stop and think about, like, what I was going to say and how I was going to say it, treat it with care. Like, I think any kind of matter where you're, you know, you're talking about another person's, like, life and being, like, that's a delicate matter.
Yeah, it really is.
And probably not for me to, you know, decide if something, because, like I said, like I'm not trying to be like on this, like, you know, God complex level of thinking, right? So I don't think that I'm, you know, worthy of deciding whether or not somebody should exist anymore. And I think that, like, even if we're not talking about someone specifically, it's just the fact that, like, the nature of this issue is very delicate, you know? So, and that's for somebody who doesn't, you know, think it should be a thing anymore, you know? I mean, could you imagine, like, and I think also, too, it, like, forces you to, like, admit things about yourself and about human nature that you maybe wouldn't want to. Like, for instance, if I was, like, pro-death penalty, like, I'm about this, fuck this person, they can go rot in hell, die, whatever, like, if I felt that way genuinely, and I was, you know, it's kind of like this weird irony, right? Because the reason why somebody might be on death row in the first place is because they might be a murderer or done some heinous crime.
Yeah.
And we look at that as not protecting life. And in order to protect life, we then have to take life away. So there's this weird, like, irony that's happening, right? This weird contradictory thing. And people don't want to admit that they want to, you know, resort to their primal instincts and, like, go full-on savage beast mode and, like, kill somebody. Like, I would never say, like, you know, oh, I'm going to go kill somebody. Like, that's such a taboo. But that's what you're doing when you endorse the death penalty. I mean, it's the same thing as, like, pro-life people, you know, being like, what was that? I think I read some weird, like, oh, I know. It's like the same thing as, like, when you see, like, pro-life people who are like, I'm about the sanctity of life, like, doing, like, you know, abusing folks, or, like, not allowing them to have the care that they need, or you know, endorsing some other policy that, like, is disrespectful to human life, while also simultaneously championing human life. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's this weird, like, kind of contradictory.
Do you
energy.
mean, like, specifically, like, abortion?
Yeah, it's a freaking minefield, huh?
Do you mean, like, specifically, like, on the topic of abortion and all this, like, type of, like those people who, like, aren't for it, like, they just, like, I'm guessing that's kind of what you mean, right?
Like, for instance, you'll see, like, a lot of people, and, like, this isn't everybody, obviously, but, like, you'll see a lot of people who are, you know, in very conservative mind spaces, right? So they won't be in support of, like, queer people, right? Or they might be racist, or they might be, like, you know what I mean? Like ultra conservative in some ways, or they might be not very respectful of, you know, people of other faiths and other belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
But while they're saying these things, they're also like, abortion is wrong because it's disrespectful to human life and you're taking away human life. And it's like, well, if you don't support, you know, queer rights, for instance, like, they're being killed queer people being killed every day just for existing. So it's like, why don't you support that, but you support, like, ending abortion? You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy, not saying, and I'm not saying that everybody who's pro-life thinks that way, but, like, it's a lot of people that do.
Yeah, yeah.
That do.
Being selective in
and like,
yeah, it's just like being selective in what you, like, even though it's all in the same category, you're being selective and picky about it instead of. You know,
yes, exactly. That's exactly the word I was looking for. Yeah, it took me like 5 million years to get there, but we got there. Yeah. Selective, like you're being selective with what lives you decide are worth saving and respecting. And it's the same thing, and probably a more extreme example when you talk about something like the death penalty, because you have people who are for the greater good of society, you're opting to kill someone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, there's that, it's contradictory because you're being selective. You're deciding, well, life matters, human life matters, except for this person, because whatever reason, you know? And then also, like, so it you know, that makes that difficult to talk about, because you have to have that kind of hard conversation of being able to, or of admitting that you are in favor of, you know, taking someone's life, like making it so that they are no longer in existence. And it's just, I mean, and then also, like, I think having that, like, level of, like, dissociation, like being able to detach, because they're not necessarily the person who's, you know, flipping the switch or administering the injection. They're just somebody who's in favor of it. They can dissociate. So, you know, it might be easier to talk about, but when you have to get into the weeds and really think about what you're doing and what you're in support of, then you have to kind of put yourself into the issue and take ownership over that. And that's really difficult for people to do, because then that makes you complicit in taking someone's life.
Yeah, I mean, like, you think of, like, they know that by doing this they are killing someone, but they're not, like, literally killing someone until, like, you're there with
killing someone, that other person.
Yeah, exactly. That's crazy. That's very true. Yeah, I agree with that.
But then when you have conversations about it, you're forced to kind of, you know,
like,
acknowledge
see what you're
that you're complicit, that you're involved in some way, and that's hard.
Would you consider being truthful in the nature of, like, that, or setting up a front? Which one would you consider to be more terrifying in this, like, day and age? Like, setting up a front as, like, you know, this is the better for society, or just, like, being truthful as to say, I just don't want, you know, like, that I am in favor for killing people because, you know, it's better for my safety.
Yeah. I have you ever read The Giver?
Nope. I've never read The Giver. I might check that out.
Oh, dang. Okay. Or, like, any book like that, or Fahrenheit 451.
Ooh. No, but is it?
You're familiar?
I am familiar with. I'm trying to remember the one book that I read. Night. Have you read Night before? I read that one.
Ooh.
Is that, like, kind of similar?
I have not read Night. There was the other English lit class in my high school read Night. I did not read Night, but I'm familiar. Okay. But it's it's basically what I'm getting at. Like, so there's all these, like, stories about these, like, dystopian futures and everything like that, and, like, how they struggle to maintain the status quo, and anytime, like, there's a dissenter, like, they're the ultimate, like, threat to society, right? Because it's like the Matrix, right? You're like, what's easier, staying plugged in or unplugging yourself, right? Like, I think that's what our world looks like. And it's infinitely easier to just keep your mouth shut and act like nothing's going on and nothing's wrong than it is to be honest. Like, honesty is hard and scary. And I think that's harder because it forces you not only to put yourself out there potentially for public scrutiny, which can be just the worst, but also like it forces you to be honest with yourself, and you might not even want to be like admitting to some of the things that you're acknowledging about yourself. Like that can be the biggest mind fuck of all. Crazy. Yeah. So I think that we live in an ignorance is bliss type society, and if I can like be as inoffensive as possible and not ruffle any feathers, that will always be the easiest.
It really is. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Okay, I have 2 more questions. Do you believe that everyone can be forgiven? Do you believe that everyone can be forgiven?
Ooh, that's deep. I think everyone has the potential to be forgiven. I'll put it that way. Okay. Do we always get to that point? Probably not. But I think it depends on the person.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, on the person, on the circumstances. Because there are some people that do some like really vile things, and I don't want to just write them off completely and be like, well, you did a horrible thing and fuck you. Like I don't think that's right. Mainly because like, evil breeds evil. Like they probably had horrible things done to them, and didn't have the resources to cope, and so they turned to
negative
lives of debauchery, and like that's not necessarily their fault. It's just kind of how the chips fell. So I think people have the potential to be forgiven. Now, if they are not remorseful or, at least attempting to change their actions, like they're just like, whatever, screw it, I did this thing and I don't care. That's different. Yeah, I'm not saying that I wouldn't forgive somebody like that, but I don't even think that forgiveness is on their radar or something that they would want. Like, I think it's up to the person.
Yeah. And in that, like, context, I feel like, I feel like we have to really explore, like, what we would do with people like that. I don't know, like, where would we put them? Like, where would we secure them, even because, like, you can't really change who they are. You might, so it's just like, I don't know, like, even like I mean, like, it could take like years upon years to, like,
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm not saying that none of these solutions, none of these solutions, involve some level of creativity, I mean, it all does. It's kind of like when people make arguments about, well, we can't live any other way. We can't overthrow the government. We can't do these things. We can't. And it's like, that's not necessarily true. I mean, we totally could. It's just that, like, it might take a little bit of out of the box thinking.
Yeah.
And I don't think that everybody's ready for that. But I don't know. I think a lot of issues, I think, in the world could be not necessarily solved miraculously, but like aided maybe. Or improved upon with some innovative thinking. I mean, what the advancements that we have made and do make come from, innovative and creative thinking. It's just a matter of like finding people who are willing to A, do the work, and B, have the ideas. And sometimes you don't have ideas. And like, we need to be okay with being in that transitional, like, in-between period where like we recognize that something's wrong, but we don't know how to fix it. These big life and human questions, like we don't know. And I think that that's scary for people too, having to admit ignorance. Like, ignorance is bliss, but when you have to admit it and acknowledge it, then that's like no.
It's like, whoa, I want to be in control of myself.
Exactly. I need to be in control.
Wow. But yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. Okay. My final question: if you could, like, if you were in a position to be able to do this, how would you shut down the death penalty? Like in a, yeah.
Oh man. So I would, first of all, I would like probably enact some kind of policy that takes into account what crimes were committed and the circumstances under which they were committed. I feel like a lot of crime, I feel like a lot of these crimes, like especially when you talk about like serial killers and stuff like that. I watch a lot of true crime. And a lot of this stuff unfortunately could have been prevented had the right resources been in place. So I would make it so that what was I gonna say? Like we push to like kind of have measures in place to prevent, dangerous criminals from even existing in the first place. And I think that a lot of that comes from mental health support and equitable resources for people, and having, not necessarily like the big boss man government, but like some sort of entity in place that can step in and help people kind of navigate their world and do like, conflict resolution, have like more things like in our schools and stuff like that, something that like everybody has to go to or should be going to, like having more support there, like having people with good intentions in places of power, so that that then eventually kind of influences the rest of society and how we live and move. I would look to countries in our world right now that like don't have as much of a police brutality rate, or like their crime and safety looks a lot better. Like I don't know what they're doing in like the Scandinavian countries and stuff, but they're like they're living well. They're
they really are.
Right?
I think
like,
New Zealand too.
The cops don't kill people. Like what the fuck is going on over there? Like we need to like take some notes.
We really do.
Like their government takes care of them. There's free healthcare and all that shit. Like I think I think that like if we can, the more that we can admit ignorance and like look to creative solutions and take notes from people who are doing better, like we'll do better, and then we can like work together to figure out what to do with these people, that come as a result of these incidents when they happen. I also think maybe we should start thinking more about like, well, I've always been more of like a life in prison versus death penalty type of on the side of the debate, using what we have right now. But like prison reform needs to be a big thing. So like if prisons were actual rehabilitation centers and not just cages for people, like then that would be a good solution. But where we are right now, that's not the best. See, so basically my proposed solution is basically to kind of I think it starts at the bottom. Like we can't really tackle the issue of the death penalty until we, dig deeper and deal with all of our other transgressions first, because it's a result of it. And also, like, if some freak thing were to happen and people had all this support and someone was just like, I don't know, going on a killing spree or something like that, and like they wound up in that position, I don't know that the solution necessarily means that the solution necessarily is that they have to die. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can house them somewhere. You can keep people, so you can still maintain that control. And, like, without fear. I mean, like, think about, like, all the people that commit horrible crimes that walk free. because of one circumstance or another, or bias or whatever. Like, if they get to do that and benefit from their privileges, why should somebody else have to die? And it's usually people who haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
Or too often it is, you know? So I think, I think it starts at, like, the foundational level first, and, like, fixing those issues, to prevent that from even being a thing.
Okay, wow, yeah. Very insightful indeed. Thank you so much for...
Thank you. Yeah. I try.
Thank you for... You try. Yeah. Thank you for coming and talking with me on this topic.
You're very welcome. I think it's a really interesting topic to bring up. And, like, it's one of those things, like I said, that kind of delves into, like, some of the other, like, issues and ails that we have in our society, right? Like, everything's interconnected.
They really are, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of things that are connected. Ties down to a lot of simple things that we could do to fix it. You know?
Right, but, you know, people don't want to... I think it just comes down to, like, the self, right? Like, people don't want to admit certain things, and it just leads us to a whole lot of issues. I mean, like, listen, we lived through a whole pandemic. Trump presidency, and he's one person that does not know how to hold himself accountable and acknowledge when he's done something wrong. It's freaking Trump. Okay. And you saw all the issues that happened because of that.
Yeah, so of course.
We gotta do better.
You really do. And I think this is like a good eye opener too, especially with the pandemic hitting as well. Like, just that we need to do better. But
For real.
Yeah.
For real.
All right. Well, I guess it's a good place to stop, right?
Awesome. Yeah. Did I get your questions answered?
Yes.
Are we good?
Definitely.
Did I help?
Yeah. You helped a lot. Thank
awesome.
You. I just hope that this recorded well. So let me